Today's discussion will be presented in three sections since we're recording it for a radio broadcast on Federal News Network. You're welcome to post questions and comments during the session, and we will try to answer them online. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Tom Temin, host of the Federal Drive on Federal News Network.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Barbara Morton. She's Deputy Chief Veterans Experience Officer at the Department of Veterans Affairs. We've got Andy Lewandowski, Digital Experience Advisor to the Federal CIO at the Office of Management and Budget. Ken Corbin is the Chief Taxpayer Experience Officer at the IRS. And Stephen Boberski, Senior Business Development Executive for the Public Sector at Genesys. And it's good to have you all. And of course, the customer experience imperative is baked into the president's management agenda. And I think it's something that we've all been working on for many, many years anyway. But as the technology advances, as the missions change, you've got to keep up with it. So what I'd like to do is begin with Ken Corbin and just talk about what it may be obvious, but I think you need to define customer experience from your particular context at the IRS.
Sure. Good morning. It's great to be here today. So taxpayer experience for us from our context is, our agency is responsible for collecting $3 trillion in federal taxes, which basically funds the democracy in our country. Experience for us, for our taxpayers, is to create a seamless experience, ensuring that they are able to make choice and also access the information that they need in order to successfully file and pay their federal taxes. So it is that seamless experience of interacting through tax administration that is really taxpayer experience for us.
And probably getting questions answered, because paying taxes does come with questions from time to time.
It absolutely does. And, in that seamless experience, it's being able to choose how you interact with the Internal Revenue Service, whether you interact in person in one of our assistance centers, whether you call us on toll free and talk with one of our customer service representatives, or if you interact with one of our volunteers at a VITA site, or of course, interact with us digitally online through irs.gov.
All right. And Barbara, at VA, of course, you have veterans who pay taxes, but they're also receiving benefit in this case from the federal government. And VA, just so many different submissions, but give us the big picture here on how you're viewing CX these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, pleasure to be with you all today. And very much like my brother Ken and IRS, we have a huge population of veterans and their families, caregivers, and survivors that we serve, roughly 9 million plus. And as you alluded to, Tom, multiple benefits, healthcare, memorial services, and other types of areas that we provide support. And so I think for us, when we started our office back in 2015, we really wanted to define what customer experience actually would mean. So we would speak this common language across the department. So everybody kind of could be aligned, 400,000 employees strong, be aligned around that definition. And so similar to what Ken mentioned, we use a framework where trust is really our North Star, right? We are kind of really wanting to sort of build and maintain trust, which is a key theme, of course, in our the executive order that was signed, the president's management agenda. And then to sort of build and drive that trust, there are sort of three core elements that we have tried to sort of focus on and sort of hardwire into our business operations, which are the interactions and the journey that veterans take with us must be easy, they must be effective. And thirdly, and most importantly, perhaps, is they must be emotionally resonant for the veteran. So there must be empathy in everything that we do and every interaction we have. So that's sort of the common framework that we have set up at VA. Again, really mirroring and paralleling along with the OMB A11, Section 280, the President's management agenda, and certainly the CX executive order as well.
Okay, excellent. And Andy, from the standpoint of the OMB, generally OMB is worried about legal compliance and regulatory compliance and budgetary compliance. That idea of empathy, does that come up in the discussions and in the president's management agenda and how you're looking at agencies and going about their business?
Absolutely. I always say we have to lead with empathy. The basic purpose of customer experience delivery and of human-centered design is to put ourselves in our customer's shoes and experience the services that government offers in the way that they experience it. And in many cases, we have a lot of assumptions built into how our customers actually experience their journeys with government. in OMB, we're taking an enterprise global view of multiple customer journeys across our highest impact service providers. A big focus in the president's executive order on transforming customer experience, and on the president's management agenda, the priority to improve customer experience is cross-agency life experiences. For example, we know that when a member of the public is approaching retirement, he or she has worked decades contributing to the American economy. And when that person is ready to file for Medicare or to file for Social Security income, they should have an outstanding experience, regardless of how we have divided the administrative functions across agencies or programs. So empathy is key.
So that gets us to that single front door or no wrong front door type of idea that agencies have been working again for years, but the technology enables different approaches from time to time.
That's right. And in the Biden-Harris administration, our basic vision for federal customer experience is that when a member of the public interacts with their government, they should get a simple, seamless, and secure experience always, regardless of if they are starting on a search engine or starting on what we're calling our digital federal front door, which is USA.gov. They should be able to come to government through any channel and get a same high quality experience.
All right, and let's move to Stephen Boberski. You have a kind of a view from the corporate standpoint in the commercial sector and the federal sector. And what do federal agencies uniquely, do you think, have as challenges in the new era of CX?
Two of the most important things I heard were trust and empathy. And we're seeing that is a focus of all the agencies as well as their commercial counterparts, right? And, establishing trust goes, beyond security, and things like FedRAMP and some of the other programs for cloud services are all very important. But if you speak to the average citizen, they don't know what FedRAMP is. So, great that we all in the industry understand that we're taking those measures to be secure, but there's some education out there about, trust. And I'm sure our friends at the IRS certainly understand this more than anyone, right? You want me to put my social security number where, right? But this is what we do, right? And empathy and how that experience is really projected in the federal space now is all about just what everybody was talking about, Ken, Andy, and Barbara, which is mapping that customer journey, right, and the experience. In order to provide empathy from, we believe, the federal perspective, it's knowing exactly where that citizen has been in their journey with the agency, which is, hey, we can see from the data that you've called in multiple times, you've tried an email, we have a record of where you've been. Perhaps we can see that you've tried to file your taxes, or you've tried to renew something at the DMV, or in this case, create a new claim. And you're struggling with that. We can see that you've been on the website. We can help the agencies determine when the agent calls in, instead of playing 20 questions, hey, how can I help you today? What have you done? Have you tried this? The agent already knows where they have been, what they have done, and they can now start up, I see you've been trying to file a claim. How can I help? I noticed you tried to do this. And that automatically puts them in an empathetic position. And knowing where they've been in that customer journey is very important. And we feel that that's at the forefront of delivering experience and empathy as a service.
Yeah, you make a good point there, the idea of the information about the person who is contacting. And golly, I'm going to throw this one to you, Andy, because in the first generation of eGov, and this goes back to the late 90s or mid 90s, the government wasn't even allowed to issue cookies to people that visited websites. So, Lord forbid we should know anything about them, which had a well-intentioned idea of privacy and the government not collecting data that it's not allowed to collect. We've moved from there, haven't we, where it's actually useful to know something about the history of a person's interaction, even though it has to be safeguarded for safety and security reasons. So talk more about how that has advanced, the idea of retaining file information, if you will, or case information on individuals.
Sure. There are two ways I want to answer that. The first is, if we were to design a federal service or agency from scratch, the technologist would probably start by implementing a single customer relationship management system. That is not the reality in most of our federal agencies and programs today. We have many, many systems, hundreds of systems on the back end, and they're very complex. So the challenge that agencies have from a technology standpoint is to make sure that those systems are talking to each other, that information is being securely stored and shared across programs internally, and that those systems are fundamentally mapping themselves in the backstage, as I like to say, to the front stage experience that customers have when they interact with government. The second way I want to answer that question is to talk about privacy, the Paperwork Reduction Act, and burden. One of the big focuses with our federal customer experience work is what we're calling the time tax. We want to fundamentally reduce the time tax and the time that people spend interacting with government. The Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, also known as OIRA, recently released a memo that challenges agencies to look for ways to reduce burden. The obvious example is through government forms, which is the information collection. So we're challenging agencies to say, hey, these paper forms, this information that we've been collecting from members of the public for, in some cases, decades, do we need that information? Do we have to keep asking for the same information is kind of the first step. The second step is we're challenging agencies to say, hey, what are you doing with the information you already have on file? Do you have to ask your customers for that same information again? I think the IRS is actually a perfect example. We file taxes each year annually. My direct deposit information generally doesn't change because I don't change my bank account that often. That's information that the IRS has on file because as a customer, I have chosen to receive my refund via direct deposit. So the IRS can use that information and to serve me in other ways through other parts of my journey as a taxpayer.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's ask Ken Corbin about that very idea. Of course, IRS has 7 years of data on people. You've got a lot of information to begin with. Are there other sources of information or other bits of information that would help specifically the customer experience, taxpayer experience idea that you wish you had or that you do have? What's required here besides just the pure tax history itself?
So I think that we have some wonderful examples these last 2 years that really highlight the principle that you're talking about. I mean, the last 3 years or so, we have issued over 490 million economic impact payments, otherwise known as stimulus payments, for over $630 million out to eligible citizens and taxpayers that needed it. And so when you talk about taking action with information that you need or information that you already have, we were able to partner with our partners in VA. We were able to partner with our partners in SSA and get information that the IRS did not have, such as direct deposit information, and use that information to make sure that those payments reached eligible citizens directly into their bank accounts. And this is using information that the federal government already has, not information maybe that the IRS might have had in its databases, but we were able to partner with our other federal agencies to be able to do that. Another wonderful thing we did was from the American Rescue Plan, which changed the taxability of unemployment income. And so this gets to the point of the IRS already had the information that it needed. In the past, we would have asked our taxpayers to please come in and file an amended return to claim that benefit. But instead, we took that information that was already in our records, and we were able to make adjustments to taxpayers' accounts who had already filed to over 13 million taxpayers, so they would not have to come and interact with us in order to receive the benefits of that law. That's really what experience is about. It's taking what you have, finding what you need, and finding simple ways that you can execute on a plan so that our customers don't have to take unnecessary steps in order to receive the information or the benefits that they need.
All right, that's a natural segue to Barbara Morton from VA, working with IRS on this very topic. But I imagine you've got a lot of information about veterans that is used for the clinical purposes, but perhaps that can be repurposed maybe for customer experience. Say, if you know someone has a hearing deficit, for example, or sight impairment.
Yeah, so very similar to our brothers and sisters across agencies, hundreds of different systems in VA capturing similar or same information. And so over the last number of years, my office has sort of been a data steward of some key information, such as contact information, right? And that's so critical for us because we want to be able to communicate to veterans in a way that is effective for them. And what we hear from veterans is that they would prefer sort of a personalization type of communication in their particular location or area. And so what we've been able to do is actually use the data that we do have integrated and send out sort of targeted artifacts, whether it's newsletters or other information in particular regions or with particular veteran populations, to make sure that we're giving that more customized approach rather than sort of a blast one size fits all. And I think the interesting moment that we're in and customer experience to me is such a driver of this is that the sort of default assumption that a one size fits all approach will hit the mark for everybody, I think we're moving away from that, and customer experience gives us the opportunity to be more personalized and customized to meet our customers and those we serve where they are and where they prefer us to be. So great opportunity to continue to leverage data for that personalization.
Yeah. And Stephen, that's possible to do that personalization in a mass situation, lots of people.
Absolutely. What we're seeing now is the federal agencies, they move forward with things like the Data Act and trying to introduce knowledge management as a practice and leverage the data that they have at their disposal. They do need a way to front end this to the people that are facing the citizens, right? There are tons of systems. Creating an ecosystem that will involve some third-party apps, but there has to be something driving it, a brain in the middle that can reach back to, call it a data lake, call it a central repository of data. It's got to be cataloged. It's got to be identified. You have to know what you have in order to reach back to it. We're seeing agencies focus very much now on how to best present that data. It's something that we really are good at helping with, is how to present that data to the agent or so that it's not overwhelming and relevant to the journey at the time, right? So tons of data. There's so much data out there, and how to access it. It's not all available digitally. That's the first initiative, right? When it is, how do you mine that, and what database are you looking for? And also coming up with a master database of record, making sure that you're pulling, there's conflicting data out there, right? So making sure that there's some quality is attached to that. These are the challenges we're seeing them face, but through modern technology today, it's been available independently, right? But to see it all come together, facing the customer in a customer experience fashion, is really that new ecosystem that I'm creating between AI and bots, being able to mine this information. Also, we'll talk a little bit about reducing the burden to the citizen. Nobody ever talks about, everybody thinks you're talking about headcount reduction. We're talking about introducing AI, bots, and that's not the intent. The intent is, of course, to reduce the burden to the federal agency and the customer. If I want to balance or change my password, I don't want to wait on hold for that. I want to just do it. I don't want to burden the agents with that either, right? So if again, when you talk about that mapping the journey, when they come in there, it's less time doing the acquisition and more time facing the customer and the challenge, but also introducing technology today through the multiple channels and making sure that they're served as quickly as possible. Something as simple as hanging up and reducing your time in queue, but still not losing your spot, saves the agency a ton of money, which they can then reinvest. It also saves time for the citizen. But it's still all about what data they're accessing. And that is probably the biggest challenge we're seeing. And every agency is focusing on that knowledge management practice right now.
All right, we're going to pull on some of those strings a little bit harder in the next segment, but right now we're going to take a short break. My guests today are Stephen Boberski, Senior Business Development Executive for the Public Sector at Genesys. We've got Kenneth Corbin, the Chief Taxpayer Experience Officer at the IRS. Andy Lewandowski is Digital Experience Advisor to the Federal CIO at the Office of Management and Budget, and Barbara Morton, Deputy Chief Veterans Experience Officer at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm Tom Temin. This discussion is Better Customer Experience Builds Trust in Government, sponsored by Genesys here on Federal News Network.